Eat your heart out, George Lucas. This is the ultimate intergalactic romance. Hey freaks and friends, welcome to the 10th entry of the John Carpenter review series. Today we're going to be taking a look at the film that I think is probably his biggest departure from his wheelhouse of the horror, suspense, exploitation if you will. This is John Carpenter's hand at making a classier motion picture. This is 1984's Starman. Starman stars Jeff Bridges, Karen Allen, Charles Martin Smith, and Richard Jekyll, and we have special appearances by Ted White and Robert Phelan. The story of Starman follows a young woman who is visited one night by a space alien who takes on the form of her recently deceased husband. What follows shortly thereafter is her trying to get him halfway across the country so that he can get aboard the mothership and get back to his home planet, all while being chased by the government and local authorities as they have the fun sci-fi adventure that is also a very heartfelt rom-com. So despite the story sounding like it's a little too busy for itself, it actually is a fairly simple story, but it is a film that does have a lot going on with it. But that is not in any way to the film's detriment, I don't think. When you add, of course, to that the direction and the cinematography and, of course, the acting in this film, I think it makes for a really good marriage between all those elements. The film itself, as far as the way the story moves, it has a lot of great elements of tension, has a lot of fun. There is a lot of fun to be had in this film. There's humor, and of course there is a lot of heart in this film, and when you're trying to make something that is a bit of a rom-com, you do need to have that element of fun. But you do have that element of sci-fi, and with that you do have a great display of visual effects. This film was partially handled by ILM, so you know that they are not going to be cutting corners here to make this film look really good. And that's one of those things that I think really just helps make this film look like it's a level above what you would expect from that mid-80s John Carpenter sort of style. Not to say that in any bad or demeaning way, but you would think by this point his films are going to come off as still sort of within that cheaper sort of grindhouse aesthetic. This film is far removed from that. This is definitely a step in a more mature direction, and I think the story really has a lot to say with that. And of course the way the film is handled overall, it shows that John Carpenter is more than capable of being a filmmaker, like just a general filmmaker and not just a horror guy. And of course we all love his horror stuff, but it is nice to see somebody who's so renowned in that one genre to be able to go on and do something else here. I think every actor in this film plays their part as much as they need to. I don't feel like anybody really overacts in this film at all. And just to go through some of the major performances in the film, we have Jeff Bridges, who is the titular Starman. I think he really makes this movie. He really brings it to the table on this one. He's got a role that is very easy to overlook, and he has these little intricacies that he brings to the role. Just little mannerisms that you see, like his movements. When you see at the beginning when he's watching the Super 8 film that has the person that he's taking on the likeness of, you see him imitating those mannerisms, and you believe too in just the way Jeff Bridges is looking at it as the alien. You genuinely believe that he is two different people in that point, the way he's just looking at himself on the Super 8 and trying to imitate that behavior. And I know he personally brought a lot into this performance. I thought he had a very bird-like behavior, but from what I understand, he had a friend who was a dancer, and he sort of studied his sort of way of movement, and the movement is really something that plays a big part on his character. Also, his dialogue, the way he picks up on the language throughout, definitely adds for a lot of fun. Really has a fun fish out of water element that is something that we've seen time and again, but it does feel fresh here. What's really awesome too is through his character, we get to take a look at ourselves. It shows us a reflection of just how weird some of our customs are. Like, you'll see at the diner scene, she's talking to him about, no, you eat the dessert last and you eat that with a fork. Like, and he's questioning that. He's like in absolute shock about it. And of course he's talking about how we're primitive, savage, but brilliant. Like, his character definitely helps us take a look at ourselves in an almost disturbing manner. Karen Allen in this film too is really great with her character Jenny Hayden. You buy it right from the get-go that she is a woman grieving when you see her watching the Super 8 footage of her and her husband. You could tell that they were deeply in love, and you could tell there's something in her eyes that really brings about this sadness. And when she does encounter Jeff Bridges' alien, it is pretty funny at first, because it's sort of that realistic reaction where if you saw someone who was deceased, you would be freaking out. She does that perfectly, and I know most of us will never be in a situation like this, so I think Karen Allen was saying something in one of the documentaries how it was a little tricky to sort of convey this, because it's something that she hadn't really seen up to that point, and I don't think I've really seen this in a whole lot of other films. Off the top of my head, I can't think of another film that does have that element completely. I could be mistaken, if so I'll have it printed on the screen here. She definitely plays the everyday normal person here, where she's the one relaying a lot of, just the human intricacies that we have. To put it short, if Jeff Bridges is the soul to this film, she definitely brings the heart, and their chemistry together, you really buy the way the love story naturally unfolds between the two. It does start as sort of a hostile, I think I'm being kidnapped sort of situation. She gets to the point though where she's like, okay, so you look like my husband, but you're not, but you kind of are. But I think I'm loving you in a different way. So it's like she's able to fall in love with her husband again through his character. You really can buy the romance in this film, and it makes for a lot of fun, and it's damn sentimental too. Charles Martin Smith in this is an extremely likable government guy. He's sort of the one who has the extraterrestrial expertise. He's very much aware of the fact that there was the record with the Voyager 2 probe. He was part of the crew that assembled that, so he understands that, hey, we invited this alien to our planet, so it would be really wrong for us to try and treat him as if he's a threat, which is what his superior, played by Richard Jekyll, that guy was like absolute prick in this. He's sort of the typical government reactor that we usually get in these kind of movies that deal with sort of the outer space encounters. He's that one who's ready. Yeah, this is a combat situation. We're gonna nuke the shit out of this guy. That's his superior. So there's a great juxtaposition there with those two characters, where Smith's character is trying to be friendly with the alien. He does something in the third act that I think is absolutely commendable, and is probably one of the single better character moments in the film, and there are a lot of them, so trust me when I say that. But I think Richard Jekyll plays the dickhead superior pretty well. One other performance I want to talk about real fast is that of Ted White as the deer hunter. Now, most of us, I believe, have Ted White as our favorite, or one of our favorite Jason portrayals. He was my personal favorite, still is, and to see him in this role playing just a normal guy, kind of a dickhead, It's just a lot of fun to just see him at that same time where he was playing Jason. And you could totally tell the dude is a stuntman in that fight scene. Like, just the punch he delivers to Jeff Bridges, like, you could totally see that. Hey, it's okay, I'm a trained stuntman. I was John Wayne's stunt double. You could tell that just by the way he swings at Jeff Bridges there. So, and when he gets hit back, like, I had a sort of a weird little one of those random thoughts where when his buddy deer hunters were running out of the diner, I was thinking, you know, it would be funny if those were the other Jason actors. Of course, this was before the franchise really took off in the later part of the 80s. Ted White was a lot of fun to see in here, though. Rest in peace, Ted White. And while we're talking about performances too real fast, I do want to touch on two other ones before we move on. George Buckflower we get in here making his third performance in a John Carpenter film so far. In this one, he plays a line cook who is giving the Starman a ride. So he's not seen drinking, he's not seen to be a drunk. You could say, if we're following the George Buckflower saga, he's trying to get his life back together at this point. He's just a normal guy trying to get his daughter through college. He's doing alright. He's got a fun little moment where he gives the Starman a cigarette. Of course, the Starman has never probably smoked a cigarette, being that he's sort of a formless alien form, you know? So you have a fun little bit there where he's of course oblivious to the fact. It's just a lot of fun. But yeah, George Buckflower in his third appearance in a John Carpenter film. And we have Robert Phelan, who is also making his third appearance. The name I thought I had recognized during the credits, so I did end up going on to Letterboxd to check that out. He was in Halloween previously. He was the original Dr. Wynn. Dr. Wynn, you ask? Well, yes. And he was also in Someone's Watching Me. And he's one of the, he plays the Major in this film. It's kind of a small, thankless role, but Robert Phelan is in here making his third and final John Carpenter appearance. One way you could describe this film is that overall it's like if E.T. were a love story. In a lot of ways this is very similar to that, where you have the alien who's a fish out of water who, for the sake of its own health, must get back on the mothership and go back to his home planet. Another thing too, the visual effects in this film overall are pretty damn astounding. Of course, again, with ILM, you can't really expect anything less than at least passable, you know? So I think the effects in here visually are pretty astounding still to this day. I mean, the whole mothership coming down, the fact that it's all spherical, I thought was pretty damn cool. When he's transmitting his message to the rendezvous ship also, like he's using the little orbs. That whole scene where he's out on the porch and you just see sort of the effect that the orb has. And honestly, every time we do see the orbs in action, visually those effects look like they could still pass in a film today. The baby animatronic and the whole growth sequence there, the quick human growth scene, I thought was pretty cool. It was definitely an interesting little thing there. Kind of like it was in the vein of like an American Werewolf in London's werewolf transformation. Watching that, it kind of gave me a feeling like, wow, our bones stretch as we grow. To have that happen in like a minute's time has to hurt like a son of a bitch. But I thought that was a pretty cool and relatively unique sequence in film. I will say too that the animatronic baby was absolutely terrifying looking when it turns around. Like, first of all, the little fucker's glowing from the inside. That's just creepy. But when he turns around, the face was just a little bit fucking scary there. Like, just, I don't know if it was the way the eyes were spaced from each other, but it was fucking scary looking. The deer scene also was, it was a beautiful moment where you see the Starman's compassion for not just humanity, but all life on Earth, really. He is talking about how he finds the whole idea of hunting to be stupid. It's just showing just how primitive we are. And when he resurrects it, the behind the scenes story for that I thought was really cool, because I always thought, well, that's probably just an animatronic deer. That's pretty cool. At least when they're getting it to start coming to life on the hood, but it was actually, they had a real deer and they gave it a sedative and then they gave it the antidote right before they were starting to shoot that scene. So when you see that deer coming to life, it looks as if it's really coming back to life in that real time. The climax in this film is pretty good too. It's definitely got its fair share of tension and suspense. It's in the middle of the Arizona desert, which you're expecting to not be a very visually satisfying sort of way to close out a film, but I thought it looked pretty damn good. It definitely had its own sense of atmosphere, and I mean, you kind of get that throughout this whole film. You feel like you're really in all those different locations, and that is just the way it is when you are filming on location as opposed to on a closed set. And most of this film, I believe, was shot on location, whether it was going through the middle of Tennessee, or I think they shot the Arizona scenes in Utah. I could be mistaken there. The climax, though, is a very tense sequence where you have the government closing in on them. They've got the helicopters. You've got John Carpenter cameoing as one of the pilots. You know shit's going down when Carpenter's flying a helicopter trying to chase an alien down. The music by Jack Nietzsche is really great in this film too. It's definitely got that more dramatic sort of flair to it, which I think is really important for a film like this. That's not, again, what we would have expected from John Carpenter at the time. So the score, I think, really aids the film. It's definitely going for the big dramatic, but it's got its subdued moments where it's quiet, but it's still there, and it's helping the scenes move along. And there's also this nice little vocal effect too that I believe was Jack Nietzsche's wife. He had recorded her vocalizing a little bit, and that, I think, is just an absolutely beautiful little piece that we get throughout the film. Donald M. Morgan is also back in this film as cinematographer. We last saw him on Christine. I think what he does here with the cinematography works a lot better than it did on Christine. You could tell he knows he's shooting a different kind of motion picture here, and I don't know if it's just because I'm a sucker for these road movies, so I think just something about that visually makes it a lot more fun to watch than something like Christine, which, again, I absolutely adore that film. On the whole, though, I think it does look a lot better. It's definitely at this point where I'm not doubting Morgan's capabilities as a cinematographer. And I do want to say, too, I think that David Morgan and John Carpenter were, if they had been given more films to do together, if this hadn't been their final collaboration, I think they could have made a hell of a team. It would have been nice to see what they could have done going forward, but we do have somebody else coming back next time. I like that this film tells us we people are at our best when things are at their worst, which is an absolutely beautiful line. I think is really a great summing point to this film. And it also begs the question, who is the missionary and who is the cannibal? Those two elements are key components to this film that I think really are the broader message that Carpenter's trying to relay here. So in closing, guys, Starman is a beautiful film that allows us to see a different side to John Carpenter's ability as a filmmaker, and yes, I stress filmmaker. This is definitely him coming really into his own as more than just the guy who shot Halloween. This is him being a guy who can make a damn movie. A really good one, too. This is a movie that has a lot to offer in terms of sight, sound, and soul, and I believe is a movie that we should be talking about more often when we talk about great films of the past 40 years. At the end of the day, guys, Starman gets 4.5 angry truck stop Jasons out of 5. As always, guys, thank you for watching. Please be sure to play with the little icons down here. Do what you will with those. At least comment, let me know what you guys think of Starman. Have you not seen it before? If so, let me know what you thought about it. Does this sound like a movie you would want to see? Would you like to see them try their hand at remaking it? I probably wouldn't, but all the same, let me know down there. Maybe even subscribe so you guys don't miss what's coming out next time when we take a look at the 1986 film Big Trouble in Little China. See you there.
Yeah, well, you know, that's just like your opinion, man.